Long before the C5 Corvette, this ruminated for me in a different way. A lot of people know the C5 Corvette is what changed and saved Chevrolet. But back in the day, it wasn't always like that. I grew up learning about these cars as well as other cars out there just from wrenching with my dad. And with his innovation and his knowledge to be able to do that kind of stuff and reverse engineer stuff and whatnot, yeah, I think this is going to be a cool episode. I think this is going to be really cool to talk a little bit about my family history as far as where we came from and how I got to the point I'm at with the cars and all that kind of stuff. So stick around. I think you guys are going to enjoy this. So my story starts back in the 90s.
Words of wisdom. Drop that zero and get with the hero.
He's from when I was about, I don't know, 10 to 12, somewhere around there. I do remember about when I was about 10 when my dad got out of the military and shifted up to the Illinois area. We used to be from Pontiac, Illinois, and we grew up there. During the time up there, I think I was about 12. I'm not for 100% sure, but I do remember back in the early 90s, he brought home his first C3 Corvette. And I remember that car. It might not have been his first car. I probably should ask him, but I remember it as being his first Corvette that he ever brought home. It was a C3 Corvette. And I remember that car just because the C3 back then, when he had it, it needed a little bit of work. It was a project car, but it ran and drove. To me, it was a nice car. But what sticks out to me is the white tail end. So the tail end of that was because somebody wanted to put, I think, the spoiler on the C3 Corvette. Not all C3s came with the spoiler that scooped up on the back. Some of them came flat. And I think the person, he either put it on or somebody else put it on. And it was a white back end of that car on a maroon body. So that's kind of what sticks out to me. And I remember when he had the business down in the plaza area, we rode in it multiple times, and I remember seeing it sit in front of the house multiple times. He had a driveway, but that was a very small driveway. And at most of the time, housed a 57 that me and him worked on when I was a kid. You know, that was a 57 Bel Air that we used to work on, and we were in the process of restoring. So I've been working on cars a long time, and that C3 was the first generation of Corvette I had ever worked on with him. You know, I remember him painting it, and he color matched it the best he could to that. You could still tell it was a little bit off. If you guys don't know about color matching, back then we weren't very familiar with it. Maybe he was, I wasn't, but he was teaching me about some of that stuff. And I think what ruminated for me for that was I learned how shadowing different paints out there had different ways that they did it. So every factory out there has a different way they paint code, and that's one of the things I learned is there's different shades to it, and you have to really match it to the different tones that are out there. So that was my first step of learning body work and learning how to paint, as well as the 57 Bel Air that he was working on as well too. So yeah, body work is not something I'm afraid of. So that's kind of where this comes into place, and learning a little bit about this. You know, throughout the years he had that, he sold it, got something else. He was always going through cars because he enjoyed cars. He loved learning about it, he loved wrenching on them, and he was always growing his knowledge of them. And that's kind of where I've gone and done what I've done. I know sometimes I lose my ass on the car, but sometimes I do really good on the cars too. So it's a kind of a cat and mouse game where you play going round and round. But you know, the next generation of car that he had that I really loved, and this is also a Corvette, was the C4. He had bought a C4, and I think it was an 84 if I remember exactly. I was in high school about that time, and I remember that car because that car had so many problems where the electrical was just crap. They had what's called the crossfire injection. A lot of guys are gonna know that as the crap injection for the Corvette. And if you see it, I think they only had it on the Corvette, even on some of the Camaros and stuff, for about 1.5, maybe 2 years. And then they did away with that and did the TPI system, the tune port injection, and they made a whole change. Now the concept between the C4 technology that they had for there. It was a shorter base on the top, so they kind of shrunk down the intake, and it just, the spread for the fuel to get into the intake to get to them, it just never worked out. They had basically two carbureted tops on it, but they're electronic, so one was here, and basically they'd be firing on both sides, but some of that fuel would not get to part of the intake and not get to some of the cylinders. So that was one of the iterations of the Corvette I used to grow up on, plus the digital dash that it had back then. You know, in '84, when he bought it, it was used. The lighting behind the digital dash would go out, and he would have problems with that, so I think he changed some of it. I remember him soldering on some of the electrical stuff, trying to repair some of it. I think the biggest issue was, you know, my mom used to like driving that car, and I remember once she called me when I was at high school, and I came home to help her out with it, and the fans would not shut off. They just kept running, just never shut off even after she shut the car off. So I had to go, I think I pulled the battery cable or one of the relays, one of the two. I don't remember exactly, but I remember I had to go shut it off for her. But then also as a flip side, I remember riding with her in it once, and she was at the bank, and all of a sudden the car started overheating and she had to shut it off. The fans weren't kicking on. At that point, I was still younger. I didn't know a lot about it. I knew a little bit because I worked on the car with my dad, but he had to, I think, come fix that one and get it going. And yeah, so that car, because it was the very first car for Corvette, because they didn't make one in '83. '82 was the last year for the C3, and then 82 was the last year for the C3. '83 was the blank year. They didn't make any Corvettes. Then '84 they came out with the C4. Now, I know I say '83 they didn't make any Corvettes. They had some prototypes out there that they had released, but none of them were actually, I think, to the public. I think some of the private collectors have them out there now, but there was very few numbers, and I'd have to look that kind of stuff up. But yeah, that car was second iteration of learning how to work on Corvettes, and I've had a few C4s in my lifetime, and they're nice cars, but the crossfire injection, it's got to go. So later on in life, we were growing up. I think I had kids at the time. I had moved out, and my mom had purchased a C5 Corvette. It was we loved the design, we loved everything about it. But it's a Nosak blue, and that was a very pretty color. It was the coupe, and that car there was the first iteration of us actually learning about performance with a real Corvette. Back in the day, the 70s, they didn't have a lot of performance just because of all the emissions and the struggle for gas, and then 80s, the same thing, they were very low powered. But the C5, when it came out, that changed it. LS1 was released into this car. This was the first generation in '97 to have an LS motor, and it changed everything. The C5 Corvette, when it came out, it actually had the engine in the front, and a lot of people don't know this, but the transmission is in the rear. And they made for a full 50-50 weight balance of it. They have a torque tube that goes and connects between the two, and the reason for that is they were trying to find the most balanced car out there for autocross and for drag racing. They were more geared towards the autocross racing, and they were trying to break into a lot of stuff for the track. So that's why they wanted the 50-50 ratio. A lot of people don't know this as well too. The Corvette, the C5, formed its way to the C8 now as far as the rear mid-engine car, where they made a whole bunch of design stuff. So without this was the game changer. This actually saved the Corvette because they were talking about getting rid of the Corvette. So for me, that's kind of why I've always loved this car. But what really means a lot to me about it is back in the day, you guys gotta correct me, but I think it was right around 2011, 2012. I had just moved back to Pontiac area, and I was living in Peoria and hadn't moved back to Pontiac yet. And my dad and my mom decided to take a family trip, and we all went out, and he basically transported 6 or 7 cars out there, and we drove them all the way back from Santa Monica to Pontiac, Illinois, which is, if everybody knows, in Pontiac, Illinois, it's right off of Route 66. And that Corvette, the C5, the Nosak Blue, was in that car. It was in that fleet of cars that went out there, and that everybody got to drive. We all rotated cars. We all drove different ones. That can be for a different story, but that car has some meaning to us because we enjoyed that car. You know, between my mom driving it and we learning about the different technologies that the C5 had. You know, even with the C4 has a lot of memories for me because I remember my mom, she used to love that car when they take the target top off, and she'd be jamming out to like the B-52s or Celine Dion, just jamming out on that because I'll tell you, the C4 for its year had a pretty nice sound system in it. And most of the time they try to put Bose in these and sound pretty good. So yeah, I think that's why I'm really wanting to redo this. Now, this isn't my first iteration of a C5. My first C5 was a 97 black Corvette. I really started dabbling in on myself. And that car was a little monster on wheels. That car had a Pro Charger. It was a very clean car. And I'll put some videos up here so you guys can kind of see it. Yeah, it was a nice car. Life got with me. I saw a truck. I really wanted that instead of the car. Made a mistake, and yeah, I should have never got rid of him. You know, seeing my son many years later, this is his C5 Corvette. He bought that. He's had a few accidents in it where he's basically ripped out the hood of it. It's got damage on the bumper and stuff, whatnot. So yeah, that car has been through some stuff, but he's also been using it to try to learn how to drift in, and he's got some videos where he's doing some donuts and stuff where he's actually learned how to control it very well to do the drift and do different things. Now he is being safe. He does it on the track most of the time. I can't say that he does it all the time, but most car guys, they're not going to admit to that kind of stuff. But yeah, so when he had that, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little jealous. I missed my black C5 Corvette that I had. And you know, a while ago, my dad bought my mom a car, another C5. She had a C8 Corvette, and that C8 Corvette she loved. She never really drove because they changed the whole design to a rear engine, so they changed the whole cab, and yeah, so it wasn't the same. So he found another C5. Got her that, and you know, the rest is history. After that, I started seeing Corvettes pop up on my feed, and I started looking at them again, and saw this one come across, and the guy had it marked for $6,000, and I was talking to the guy, and I said, you know, kind of what's your bottom dollar you're looking for that car? You know, it needs a little bit of work. It has the front headlight that we got to change, and redo some work to it. It's got a salvage title I got to go and start working towards and doing that. And basically he came back and said $4,000 cash, come pick it up. And I was like, holy crap. C5 Corvette, I know the rebuilt title is going to be a little bit, I know it's not going to be worth what a true C5 is, but I'm seeing some of these go upwards of $15,000 to $20,000 on some of these low miles. This one's only got 80,000 miles, which is less than most vehicles out there. For example, Xander's has 156,000 miles on it. So the younger generation is getting a hold of them and driving them. And again, I know the rebuilt title is not going to make it worth what it should be, but we are going to put it back to our glory and kind of make it our own. So that's where we're going to start working towards. We have a lot of work to do to start trying to get it ready to take up to Mobile and take it to the people that we worked with last time. This isn't our first rodeo. We've done a few of these cars where we've done a salvage to rebuild title. I kind of learned the process for what to do on it and what needs to be taken care of. So we are going to get the parts on order to fix this. We're going to get everything squared away, taken care of, make sure there are no dash lights on, get all that stuff repaired, and then we're going to take it up there, get it inspected, get it legal and roadworthy by the law. And once we do that, then the modifications are coming. So yeah, C5 Corvette, baby. You know, we got this. Unfortunately, I did have to sell the Civic. That Civic did have a lot of work into it as far as me doing some stuff. There was a guy that bought it. He had nostalgia for the 2000 Civics as well. So yeah, I think the long run, this car will be a little bit nicer once we get done with it. It's got a few things that we got to do. It's an automatic, so it's not as desirable as a 6-speed car, but still, there's a ton of automatics out there. A lot of people still don't drive it. Plus, my son Logan wants to be able to drive it. I think that's going to be something good to be able to let him go drive and enjoy and do some stuff. He's going to be helping me fix some of this up. And for the most part, he does help me He does help me with some of the stuff as far as some of the car maintenance and that kind of stuff. Still got the Excursion, still got Diamond, our black bike. So yeah, we got a lot going on, and we actually have in about 2 weeks. Countdown has begun. 2 weeks. Right now is all scheduled up, and I'm waiting to get the final stuff. We have a Nissan Stagea coming. So if you guys are followed along this far in the video and you guys want to see more Stagea stuff, let me know down below. But also, I want to know down below, what vehicles got you guys get into cars? What do you remember as a childhood or growing up and doing to get to this point of working on vehicles? Because if you're watching this, most likely you guys are car guys. Most likely you growls. You guys are probably into cars and you really want to work on them, or you like watching other people that work on them. What got you into that kind of stuff? I want to hear about some of that stuff. Put it down in the comments. Maybe we might try to start a podcast where we talk about different things and reminiscing on the history and stuff. So yeah, like I said, subscribe, like, share, and we'll see you on the next one, because we got a lot of work to do. So I got to get going on this. I got to go file the paperwork and get the title and everything sent over to them. Plus, I got to get the parts for this thing so we can get it fixed. So, peace.